What's up, ClearTalk? It's late. It's late. I've been doing videos all day. What's up, everyone? Welcome to ClearTalk. In this video, we're going to be getting into a little bit more risky stuff. I'm kidding. Well, maybe not. So yeah, we're going to be talking about getting into the religion video here. So we're going to be talking about hell in this one, my thoughts on it. Do I believe it? Do I not? What I think the whole concept about it, where did it come from, all that kind of stuff, and what it means to me, what it doesn't mean to me, and just basically just talk about it. So hopefully you'll hang with me. Hopefully it won't be too long. So anyways, thank you for joining me. Hopefully you're liking the content here on the channel. I don't do religious stuff too often, but I thought I'm going to try to do some here and there about different subjects, matters, and so you want to let me know things that you would like me to talk about when it comes to religion, particularly I guess Christianity, but it could be anything. We could go over it, or I could talk about my thoughts on certain subjects, whether it be certain parts, stories, ideas, or whatever, whatever the case. But today we're talking about hell. So, like I said, consider subscribing, like, comment, share, all that good stuff. And apologize, I'm a little bit off right now. It's just like, for starters, I know I hate my mic. I've been listening back to videos for the past couple weeks, and I hate the way the mic sounds. I don't know why it sounds like it does. When I first bought this mic, and this is supposed to be a high quality mic, like this is a high production mic. And when I first bought it, it sounded great. I really didn't see a problem with it. But for some reason, I don't know if it's through some updates or something, I don't know, but for some reason it just does not sound right anymore. And I don't like the way, I just don't like it. So I did just order a new one, and along with even like a interface things, I can quickly adjust stuff on the fly. I mean, it's a cheaper one. I mean, both pieces together cost as much as this mic did. But anyway, so I'm gonna get that in. I'm gonna try it out. We're gonna see if it sounds better, if it functions better. Because this one, oftentimes I have an issue with it, even like working with the programs and stuff, and like constantly having to redo outputs and things. It's just odd. Even when it comes to gaming and stuff, it's just all right. We're not here to talk about that though. But it's like in the back of my mind right now how I sound right now. Anyways, so hell. This is in light of I don't always engage a lot in religious stuff, like with people. I do share a lot of stuff. Because I guess the quick disclaimers, I am more in the kind of atheist bubble. I used to be evangelical, Christian, Baptist, Southern Baptist, all that good stuff, for like first 25 years of my life. I'm 42 now, so it's been about 17 years that I have. And while my deconstruction and change in belief and whatnot happened, it really only happened over. It took a couple of years of me really kind of deconstructing through, tearing down all that, like, all those walls and all those, like, things that had been pasted in my mind all over for us in all those years. This, I feel like this light is too bright, and it's causing a lot of, okay. And it took, that was pretty quick, but since then, like, and I went through all my different stages of, like, you know, anger, frustration, and then, like, early on, I did attack a lot of people. But then it got to where, you know, I was just more into sticking to myself and understanding myself more, understanding, you know, the world, the universe, religion, and how that ties into it, spirituality, all that kind of stuff, and where I wanted to fall in that spectrum, right? So I have done a lot over the years of reading on different things. Of course, it was the core of it was learning about the history of Christianity, the origins of it, and then, like, breaking down all your different, like, stories and, like, points within the Bible, and you know, connecting them with other ancient mythology writings and literature and stories and all that kind of stuff. And I've done that over and over and over again, and through different sources, through different, you know, historians and archaeologists and all this stuff. Like, I've learned different things, heard several different point of views, and I mean, I will literally, like, especially since we were able to start wearing earbuds and stuff at work, I constantly am listening to, I mean, I've not just religious stuff, but I oftentimes find myself just listening to, you know, 30-minute, hour, even more, sometimes 2-hour discussions and stuff about a certain topic or whatever, when it comes to the, you know, the Bible or ancient, you know, stories or philosophers, or, you know, whatever, writers of even outside the Bible, like all kinds of stuff. So it's just something that I've done. And hell, of course, being one of those subjects matters, you know, trying to learn about it as well, or you know, where it come from, the idea of it, and all that kind of stuff. And while I'm not, like, perfectly astute in remembering every little detail, and sometimes some of those thoughts mix up in my head sometimes about it, but I understand where I'm coming from, or my understanding of it, and I express it that way. So this is not like some, you know, like I said, some academically, like, I'm not going to be academic on you at all. It's going to be relatively, like, layman's. But yeah, this is in light of recently talking with some family. Sometimes I do engage every now and then whenever somebody posts something that's, like, that seems, because oftentimes when things are posted from, say, a religious person, especially when it comes to like a meme or some shit like that, it's oftentimes very specific, or it's like kind of straw manning a perspective, when it comes to atheists or something like that, if it's in reference to that. So I oftentimes, if it just, especially with certain family members or whatever, I will engage a little bit. I'll kind of broaden the topic a little bit, give a more nuanced opinion, seeing as though I do consider myself an atheist. Maybe kind of more of a astrological, spiritual atheist to some degree, I guess. Whatever. I don't know. I don't know how to really describe myself, but and sometimes when I do that, you know, it depends. I get all kinds of different responses. Sometimes they're pretty calm. Sometimes they're fairly aggressive. But a lot of times, in here recently, and I've had this several times, but here recently, you know, it's oftentimes, you know, at some point I get the, well, I just, you know, I do pray for you and hope that you know, find your way back to the Jesus, your, you know, your Father, blah, 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 Heavenly Father, blah, 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 and, or, you know, whatever you want to call, different ways of saying it, but anyways, basically finding Him again, and, you know, so that I can, you know, have my eternity in heaven and not burn for all eternity in hell, in the, you know, hell's fire, or whatever the case. Something to that degree, something to that, like in that realm. And sometimes I find it kind of hard to answer that. Sometimes, most of the time, I actually don't answer to it. I'll often maybe not even say anything, or just say thank you. But then sometimes it depends upon how the conversation is went to begin with, or how I'm in, what mood I'm in. Sometimes I might come back at them. You know, maybe to some point of, you know, I'm not worried about it because I don't believe in it anyways, or something, or you know, I'm usually pretty calm. But here's the breakdown. Okay. So yes. I'm an atheist, meaning that I don't believe in God in specifics. Certainly not in God according to the Bible, or even in God pertaining to some other religions and things like that. I do believe there's some sort of cosmic, like, connection power that's all throughout the universe that is, you know, kind of a collective, we're all tied together kind of thing. That some would consider, you know, a higher power or greaterness. It's really just a collective whole, I think, that where we're all connected. Like, or I don't mean just individuals, but like everything in the universe is connected to like a central power. But it's not like, it's not a deity. That's not where I'm going with that. It's like, it's not a person. It's just there, I guess. I don't know. Hard to explain, I guess. So therefore, I don't believe in heaven. I don't believe in there's some sort of other realm that we go to spend with everybody. So also encounter that. I also don't believe in hell. I don't believe in something that is some place somewhere that we go to in some type of eternal fire abyss, and we just burn forever, screaming, crying, pain, or whatever the case. I just don't. And in some recent discussions that I went through, is I found it interesting also that, especially for Christians, which Christianity you're supposed to believe in, you're supposed to follow the teachings of Christ, right? That's the core fundamental base of Christianity, is following the teachings of the Christ, and which was given to Jesus. And when you actually read on what Jesus speaks about hell, which is only in I want to recall maybe 2 places where he actually speaks about hell to some degree. And he doesn't actually speak about it in a way of a place, or in a abyss, like fire. And the actual translation isn't even hell, or that's an English term anyway. So it's a translated term. I think the term that is technically in Hebrew or in Greek, rather, is more like I want to say Golgotha or something like that, which has some questionable meaning, and to some degree, it was thought of to be an actual literal place, like right outside Jerusalem, or in that, somewhere in that vicinity, where they would take, like the dead would be taken and burned, or something like that. But to some degree, it was just like the idea of that, of a place where where you anywhere, I guess, where you just send the dead to burn, or whatnot. And he also referred to burning as a tree burns in a fire. So it was the way he talked about hell was more in a perishing kind of way. I mean, you even think about John 3:16, where it says, for God so loved the world, he gave his only forgotten Son, that whosoever perish, so whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. He says that he speaks on it more in a perishing kind of way, where you just basically no longer exist, just like the fire to a flame. I mean, a tree to a flame. It will burn, but eventually it's just goes to ashes. It's just like ashes, dust, dust kind of idea. You just perish. You cease to be. It's not some kind of eternal damnation where you go to be tortured. That's not how he taught. That's not what he taught when it comes to hell. He did speak on going to a place beyond for paradise, the everlasting life, something that was more well, really he didn't even teach on that either. The idea was that there's that because Jesus was a what's the word? I'm doing it again. Apocalyptic teacher. So in his mind, in his frame, whatever was going to happen, was going to happen soon, right? I mean, that was, and this is the same thing when it comes to Paul's writings and everything. They were all apocalyptic. This is the period of apocalyptic writing. So they thought that things were whatever was going to happen. God was going to intervene and everything was going to be like all these teachings that they were teaching. They thought it was going to happen very, very soon, like very quickly. Paul, first of his, in the beginning of his writings, it was, that he would see the coming of Christ. Like in his lifetime, he was going to see Christ come back. And, later on in his writings, it became a little bit more like, well, maybe I will die before he comes back, but it will be very soon after. Like, they thought, it was not going to be long before the world was going to end, or the world as they knew it was going to end, and a new Israel would be, built and created, and where we would live eternally, and all that. That was, and it was really a little bit more in a earthly sense, even there too. In a lot of ways. So there really wasn't an idea of going somewhere else, or even like, when it comes to heaven or hell, it really wasn't an idea of going somewhere else, going outside of the realm of known. That was, a lot of that was later. I mean, to some degree, heaven was, but not hell. Hell was not spoken in that way. Hell development came later, when later on in the early church movement, when they were developing, Christianity was first developing, the early like church creators and the early, they're the ones that started actually creating what we know of now as hell. It wasn't something that was really, and I know that a lot of people refer to Revelations, but the issues of Revelations, that the early church often argued over Revelations, that it was never, there was a huge debate early on in record that, where it's like a split of people who considered Revelations as affirmative, and those who considered it to be, blasphemous or like, heretical. And ultimately, those that thought it should be canonized and put in, and that it was, legit or whatever, won, basically. But a lot of the early church did not think that Revelation should be canonized and put in there, because they didn't think it was legitimate. It certainly wasn't written by the John that wrote John. It was wrote years later by somebody that was proclaiming to be a John. They could be a John, but it just wasn't John that wrote John. Or whoever wrote John, it wasn't that person. So as far as I'm concerned, even if you want to stick within the bounds of Christianity, and Christ's teachings, which is what you're supposed to do as a Christian, you would not technically believe in hell, because that's not what he taught. He taught about just perishing, which makes more sense to me, anyways. Even though I don't believe in it, that actually makes more sense. It would make more sense that they would teach that would be their mind frame when it comes to death. That you either died and perished, ceased to be, soul, consciousness, all like just nothing. And then you accept who God is and believe in Him, and then you have air access to heaven, whatever that may have been in their minds. So yeah, I don't believe. I don't, but like I said, so even if you are a believer, in my opinion, it's to believe in the hell as its modern conception of it is inaccurate, and questionably heretical. So no, I don't believe in anybody being punished to that degree, and it wouldn't even make sense for a God to want to do that. And that's my issue, and that's been a wraparound that I often had, even as a Christian. It didn't make sense for a God, a loving God, a loving Father, is what it's connected to. For one, being so selfish that you would want you to serve Him, worship Him, everything be about Him, and solely just because you don't believe in Him, or you don't abide by His rules or laws or whatever, that you not only don't get to spend eternity with Him, but then you're cast into some torture chamber. It just doesn't seem like it felt like it was a development that was created to scare people into believing in God. And that's where I feel like you're believing for the wrong reason, if that's the only reason why you're believing in God in the first place. If you're believing in God and heaven and in the religion simply based on the fear of going to some torture abyss and eternally being, in torture forever, it doesn't seem like a really good reason to believe in somebody. Like, using fear as a way to force people to believe. It just feels like something that was forced, that was created out of force. Because if you're somebody who wants somebody to love you, you want them to love you for who you are. You want them to love you for what you do, who you are, how you act, right? And if you're acting in a way that is what most people nowadays would be considered somewhat immoral, then why would people, that's my issue with that, along with a lot of other things that are in the Bible that God does and directs and allows to happen and everything else. But the whole hell thing, that's my issue with hell, is that it just doesn't make sense in the way of a loving God. It makes more sense that it's just like, if you don't believe in me, if you don't, worship me, and I still don't even like the idea of worshiping, but like, even if that was the case, that you just will cease to be. In death, you will not have an afterlife. If you want an afterlife, believe in me, do what I say, my rules, whatever, blah, 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 and I will give you an afterlife. But otherwise, you just won't have one. You will just cease to be. That makes more sense. Even though I don't really even like that idea, it makes more sense than I will punish you. Like, you will have an afterlife, but it's either going to be punishment or blissfulness. That's like, it just makes more sense to me that it would just be a ceasing to be. Instead of some damnation, because it's like, and then when you tie in the idea of other people, if God, he has his hands in all creation. He creates everybody. That means he's created everybody who is within the religion and everybody who's not within the religion, who's within other religions and all across the world. So if the idea was that you are only supposed to believe in him, and even a step further for Christianity, it's believing in Jesus. In many cases, it almost feels and seems like Jesus is more important than God himself. And that's because they tie Jesus in as being God, which is a whole other story, a whole other issue that we could talk about. But that believing in him and him dying on the cross and all that stuff, in order for you to get to heaven, like that's the way to get yourself in the book of life, so that you get to heaven. Not even really about deeds, good deeds or anything. It's just like oftentimes in the modern idea of Christianity, it's just believing in Jesus, period, blah, 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 point blank, the cross, resurrection, dying for your sins, and you repent, and boom, you're in heaven. So what about all the people who never had the chance, who were born? God created them. He created them and placed them in. So from God, from the instance of from the perception of God, like, why would he do that? Why would he place? It's like him placing some people with a handicap, right? He gave some people the keys to heaven by placing them literally in a Christian home that they grew up in and were given, everything right there in their hands. They had the keys to heaven given to them. But then a lot of other people, he gave them like a handicap. They had to either somehow come across it or be presented with it from an outside source, or what's the idea there? Especially when you're tying this to the one true religion concept. In order to get to heaven, or you are then sent to eternal damnation. Like, where's the fairness in that? It doesn't make sense. None of that makes sense. And when you really start to use critical thinking when it comes to a lot of the things that modern Christianity speaks on and talks about, and how the things that they connect with, eternal salvation, when you really just take critical thought to it and sort of dissecting it down and being inclusive as a worldview, and not just within your bubble, within your Christian bubble of existence, like, it doesn't make sense. and it's not fair. So, the whole concept doesn't make sense to me. In that, and let me just humor for a second. Me crediting you that it is real. Like, that I've suddenly found out, oh yeah, God's real, heaven's real, hell's real, the abyss, fire right there, and I'm walked up to it and like, sorry, bud, you gotta go. I still feel like, in that instance, I'm just going to accept it. Because then it's like I'm being fear-mongered and forced into believing in somebody who is, in my opinion, could be considered an awful God. That, that you're going to scare me into believing, like the only reason... Like it's like a last-ditch effort thing. I don't need you to believe in me for any other reason but to keep you from going there. Like, and then the idea of the concept that Christianity often brings up is how the universe was started to begin with. The idea of God creating something, wanting it to be, like a purification process for heaven or whatever, or like a science experiment, or social experiment, rather, not really science. That you would. Just who is going to be good enough to, and worship me enough and believe in me enough to. It's just very selfish. And why would you really want to worship such a selfish person? Like, why would you want to be around and hang out with? I mean, in real life, you think about that. Anybody that's around you that is just, you just know it's extremely selfish. All they care about is themselves. All they want is everything to be connected to them. They don't care about your feelings, don't care about your thoughts, don't care about what your ambitions are, or your, whatever. Like, it's all about them, and you have to constantly engage with them, jealousy and everything else. Like, you would not want to be around that person. Not in the least bit. You would more than likely tell that person to F off. They would just be a thorn in your side that's just killing you, draining you of your energy and life and happiness and everything else. And that's the way it's. That's the way God comes across to me. It doesn't really come across as loving. He just comes across as needy and selfish. And I wouldn't want to be associated with that. Even on a spiritual plane, I don't think I mean, what makes him any better than any of the gods of any mythology or anything? He sounds the same as all of them, or a lot of them. I would argue there's even some gods in mythological pantheons that are better. I mean, they're more caring and loving to humans or whatever than the biblical God, than Yahweh in the Old Testament for certain. Now, I know oftentimes there's people that argue that, or there was argument in early church that Jesus, and even now, that the God Jesus was referring to was not the same God as the Old Testament, or not the Creator God. not Yahweh. Specifically. So that he was a different God. And let's not act like that wasn't a thing. I mean, yes, by Jesus' time there was mostly monotheism being, practiced. But he was speaking on he was Jewish, and he was speaking on Jewish Hebrew literature that was back in that come from times where it wasn't monotheist. The Old Testament is not monotheist. So anyway, that's my idea on hell, and the reason why that thought. I don't have a problem with people, praying for me or whatever. It's whatever makes them feel better, whatever makes them, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. It's just thoughts. And I mean, there's no problem with people thinking about me. And thinking good things about me, hopefully. But the point of coming back, it's like once you have opened up that book, once you have opened up that sight, that third eye into seeing the Bible in a more inclusive, like parallel to all the other mythologies and religions of the time and before it, even the connections that it has, when you see all that and you see how things were rewritten and changed and altered and for the benefit of church fathers and through different time periods, and how what oftentimes has been spoken of is events literally of that time that have no actual connection to, or like the writers were not connecting some prophetic tie to people 2, 3, 4,000 years down the line. It just was not in their thought. I'm sorry, it doesn't come that way whatsoever when you read the Bible. It's all just metaphors and stuff for the time. A lot of it is for the actual events and stuff happening within that time period that it was written. So when you see it that way, the idea of coming back to it, if you see it that way to the point that you come to the conclusion that you no longer can believe in it like that you can no longer worship it, and you can no longer make it so intertwined in your life that you are making life decisions based on it. It just looks more like literature, more like a story, look more like a product of its time. You really can't go back to it like that. You really can't connect back like that. The tie has been cut. It's like learning the truth and then choosing to believe a lie again. So that's It's not gonna happen. Wishful thinking, and you can, you can pray for it if you want. That's fine. But fear mongering me for with hail certainly is not gonna. It's not gonna do it either. Anyways, thank you for joining me for this. Hopefully, I didn't burst any bubbles too bad or upset people too bad. Hopefully, I explained my opinion and thoughts in a way that was understandable and to where at the very least you see where I'm coming from. Maybe you may still not agree with me, and I may not change your mind, and I wasn't really here to do that anyways. But the idea is for you to understand that, while saying something like that to somebody like me may feel good to you, make you feel better, it doesn't really, it doesn't mean that it holds some type of water for that individual. It just comes off as nothing, honestly. But, out of respect, oftentimes, someone at my point in my life, in my journey through all of this, has just learned to be like, okay, cool. It's not something that we're going, oh my gosh, I need to go to church again. But yeah, so thank you very much, and hopefully you enjoyed this. And if there's anything else when in the realm of religion or whatever, spirituality, or if you want me to go further into my thoughts and beliefs on the universe, whatever, or anything in that realm, let me know. And let me know if you want me to go over what I somewhat have learned or know about certain stories or certain events or whatever, ideas in the Bible or whatever. Let me know. I can go over them. If it's something subject that I can really give good insight on, or I feel like I can give good insight on, I certainly will do it. So thank you very much, and consider subscribing, like, comment, share what you think about the video, what you think of hell. How do you perceive it? And what do you think about it? If you are a believer, how much weight does it really have on you? Is it something that's a strong motivator for your belief, or is it something that's just like just a part of it, but it's not what you mainly focus on, or whatever? Or if you're not a non-believer, what are your thoughts? What have you learned about it? If you've made the adventure to learn about it more, or whatever, or like I have, because I love learning more. It's like it's not that I'm learning it to want to worship it. I think a lot of people think that I'm constantly engaged in it and learning about it because I just want to be a Christian again. It's not that at all. It's not even close. It's just me simply understanding the civilizations of ancient times, and like it's just a historical thing for me. Understanding history better, understanding language and thought and cultural practices, and like to bring a more honest meaning to the literature, the writings, to understand them better, but in a way where it's just in a way of making more sense of it as it, I feel it really was meant to be. and not necessarily meant to be, well, maybe for them to some degree, but not meant to be necessarily worshipped or some dominant religion. But anyways, thank you very much for joining me, and till next time, peace.